Ladies and gentlemen, you think because she's quiet, she's broken. You think because she doesn't talk back, she's afraid. Let me tell you something. Silence is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's patience. It's focus. A silent woman is not hiding. She's building. She's not lost. She's learning. She's not backing down. She's storing up the kind of strength that doesn't need applause to be real. She sees what you don't say. She hears what you try to hide. Her stillness ain't silence. It's strategy. While the world is busy making noise, she's sharpening her sword in the shadow. While others are begging to be seen, she's becoming undeniable. That's not weakness, that's power in motion. You see, the loudest in the room are rarely the strongest, but her silence, that's the sound of something sacred, something certain. When she moves, and oh, she will move, it's gonna shake the room, and nobody's gonna see it coming. Because they underestimated the power of a woman who doesn't waste words. She doesn't shout her dream. She works on them. She doesn't prove her worth. She walks in it. Because real queens don't compete, they just rise. And when they do, the world has no choice but to pay attention. So don't confuse her quiet with retreat. She's not running, she's recalculating. She's not small, she's selective. And just because she isn't loud doesn't mean she's not lethal. It means she's wise enough to wait until the moment is right, to strike, to shine, to win. You better believe a silent woman is not weak. She's planning her power move. And when it comes, nothing will stop her. Silence is not surrender. It's strategic preparation. In a world that equates noise with confidence and movement with progress, silence is often misunderstood. But there is a quiet power that rests in stillness, in withholding and waiting. It may look like giving up. To the untrained eye, it may appear like hesitation. But those who understand the deeper rhythm of life know that silence is rarely the absence of strength. It's the presence of deeper intention. A person who chooses silence in moments of chaos isn't weak. They are discerning. They are watching what others miss. While the world is reacting, they are calculating. While others are speaking, often without thinking, they are listening with purpose. This kind of silence isn't passive. It's active. It's alive. It holds the weight of understanding, observation, and focus. It is not the retreat of the defeated, it is the stance of the wise. Strategic preparation requires discipline. It demands that we quiet the noise around us so we can hear the quiet voice within. That voice knows where you're headed. That voice doesn't need to shout because it knows that truth whispers. In silence, the groundwork of greatness is often laid. Dreams are mapped out. Fears are confronted, plans are refined. And when the moment is right, the world watches what they thought was dormant come to life with force and precision. Too often people mistake constant action for effectiveness. But power is not always found in motion. Sometimes it's found in the pause before the move. Just like an archer pulls back the bowstring before releasing the arrow, there is tension in silence. That tension builds strength, it builds clarity, it builds accuracy. And when the arrow is finally released, it flies with purpose and direction. That's what silence does for the prepared soul. It sharpens aim. There is a reason why the strongest individuals don't always feel the need to defend themselves with words. They don't use energy proving their value to others. They understand that outcomes speak louder than explanation. Their silence is not resignation. It is resistance to distraction. It is a focus on the bigger picture. It is saying, I know who I am. I don't need to convince you. In strategic silence, a woman can assess her environment, understand her opposition, and master her next step. She isn't avoiding conflict. She's choosing the right time to face it. She isn't afraid of the battle. She's preparing to win it. Her silence allows her to move with intention rather than impulse. It allows her to show up ready, not reacting. Preparation in silence is what separates those who chase attention from those who command it. There's a stillness that comes with being grounded, with knowing your worth, your vision, your mission. It doesn't panic. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need to compete for the spotlight. It knows that when the time is right, the light will find it. That kind of confidence can't be taught in noise. It's learned in quiet resolve. In that quiet space, battles are fought internally. The doubts, the fears, the insecurities, they all surface. But that's exactly the point. In silence, you are forced to face yourself. No distractions, no applause. Just you and your truth. And when you've wrestled with all that lies beneath, you come out not only stronger, but more centered, more anchored. That's why silence is not surrender. It's sacred preparation. It's doing the inner work most people run from. The world often rewards the loud, the bold, the visible. But real impact doesn't always announce itself. It grows in the shadows. It forms in private, and when it emerges, it doesn't ask for permission, it takes its place. Silence teaches patience, and patience births timing. And timing, when combined with preparation, creates destiny. Silence gives birth to vision. It allows creativity to flow, ideas to mature, and wisdom to settle. It gives the mind space to breathe, the heart space to feel, and the soul space to realign. It's where strategy replaces struggle, where faith replaces fear. It's in silence that God often speaks the loudest, not in chaos, not in crisis, but in calm. And when you lean into that stillness, you come out not just ready, but unshakable. A person in silence is not detached. They are deepening, not passive, but intentional, not weak, but wisely reserving energy for the right moment. Just like a lion watches before it pounces, a leader observes before they act. Just like a seed goes silent underground before it breaks through the soil, growth doesn't always look like progress, but it is. We live in a generation obsessed with being seen, being heard, being followed. But the most dangerous kind of power isn't loud, it's silent. Because silence doesn't need recognition to be real. It's not driven by ego, it's driven by purpose. That kind of strength builds slowly, but it lasts. It endures. It outlives the trends, the critics, the noise. When a woman stays silent, she's not giving up. She's tuning in. She's aligning her spirit, her vision, her mindset. She's preparing for impact, not performance. She doesn't need to explain her silence because her results will speak loud enough. She's protecting her peace so she can preserve her power. She's stepping back not because she's small, but because she's sharpening. Strategic preparation and silence isn't about avoiding the world. It's about becoming ready for it. It's a quiet strength that watches, waits, and when the moment comes, walks boldly into purpose. Because when you've prepared in silence, you move differently. You carry yourself with a quiet authority. You're not moved by storms because you've already weathered them alone. You don't need validation because you've already approved your own process. And you don't fear setbacks because your foundation is unshakable. The greatest breakthroughs often come after seasons of silence. The loudest victories are born from the quietest struggles. And the most powerful people are those who understood the value of stepping back, tuning out the noise, and focusing on what truly matters. So the next time you see someone choosing silence, don't mistake it for surrender. You might just be witnessing the quiet before their rise. You might be looking at someone who is about to change everything, not with noise, but with impact. A calm woman often has the deepest fire. At first glance, she might seem unbothered, uninterested, maybe even passive. She doesn't raise her voice to prove her point. She doesn't need to stand in the middle of a crowd to make her presence known. But there's something about her energy, something unshakable, something so intense. It doesn't need to be loud to be powerful because the fire within her is not for display. It's not for show. It's for purpose, for movement, for something far greater than external validation. Calmness is often misunderstood. People mistake it for weakness, for submission, for a lack of passion. But a woman who remains calm in the face of chaos is a woman who has wrestled with storms most people can't even imagine. Her calmness is not from a life of ease, it's from a life of endurance. She has faced her own battles, stared her own fears in the face, and walked through fire without letting the world see her burn. That's the kind of fire that doesn't destroy, it refines. She doesn't have to tell you about her pain because it lives in her eyes and fuels her purpose. She doesn't have to explain why she's quiet because she's listening, observing, learning. While others are reactive, she's responsive. She measures her words. She controls her emotions. She doesn't need to win arguments. She wins in silence. That's where her strength is. That's where her fire burns. Quietly, steadily, relentlessly. The deepest fire is not the one that rages openly. It's the one that stays lit in the darkest of nights. The one that doesn't go out when no one is cheering. The one that keeps burning even when the world tries to drown it. That's the fire a calm woman carries. She's not looking for sympathy. She's not chasing validation. She knows who she is. And because she knows, she doesn't need to fight for a spotlight. She is the light. There's a special kind of intensity in a woman who's been broken and rebuilt herself, who's faced loss, disappointment, betrayal, and still walks with grace. Not because she hasn't been hurt, but because she refused to let the pain make her bitter. She chose strength over spite. She chose purpose over pity. And that calm exterior you see, that's not indifference. That's mastery. She has mastered her emotions. She has tamed the fire inside her. She chooses when to let it burn. People who live loudly often try to shake her. They challenge her silence. They misread her stillness. But she doesn't move unless it's meaningful. She doesn't react. She responds. Wait, that's what makes her dangerous in the best way. Because while others are distracted, she's focused. While others are loud for attention, she's building in silence. Her fire fuels her actions, not her noise. The calm woman is not cold. She's calculated. She's not disengaged. She's determined. There's a difference in that fire inside her. It comes from purpose, from knowing that her time is valuable, her energy is sacred, and her voice, when she chooses to use it, can shift the atmosphere. She's not always visible, but she's always impactful. Her fire doesn't flicker in storm. It grows stronger. She may cry in private, but she rises in power. She may hurt in silence, but she heals in strength. She may stay still on the surface, but internally she's moving mountains. That's the kind of woman you don't see coming because her power isn't performative. It's authentic. It's rooted in her experiences, in her convictions, in her refusal to be broken by what was meant to break her. You can see it in how she carries herself, not with arrogance, but with assurance, not with noise, but with presence, not with force, but with focus. She walks into rooms with a quiet confidence that doesn't beg to be noticed, and yet she's unforgettable because fire doesn't always roar. Sometimes it glows, and when the moment is right, it ignites everything around it. This woman doesn't need to compete. She collaborates. She uplifts. She leads with intention. And that's what makes her a force. Because she's not just driven by ambition. She's fueled by meaning. Every move she makes is intentional. Every silence she keeps is strategic. Every word she speaks is powerful. And every setback she's faced has become the firewood that feeds her flame. The calm woman knows her value and she guards it. She doesn't pour from an empty cup. She doesn't seek validation in places that broke her. She's learned to find peace in her solitude, strength in her scars, and clarity in her quiet. That's why her calm isn't empty. It's full of strength, full of wisdom, full of depth. The kind of depth that only comes from walking through life awake, aware, and unafraid to start over if necessary. She doesn't get distracted by temporary noise. She sees the long game. She moves when it's time, not when others tell her to. And when she does move, she moves with purpose. She doesn't run. She rises because she knows that rushing is the enemy of impact. So she waits. She watches. She prepares. And then she delivers. Her calm is a sign of control, not surrender. It's the calm before the storm she chooses to unleash. It's the composure of someone who survived battles you know nothing about. It's the stillness of someone who understands that real power is not about domination. It's about direction. It's about channeling your fire, not wasting it. She is not for everyone to understand, and she doesn't try to be. She is for the few who see past the surface, who recognize the courage it takes to be calm in a chaotic world, who honor the strength it takes to stay grounded in a society that praises noise, who respect the fire that doesn't burn others, but builds a path for herself. In her calmness, there is clarity. In her stillness, there is strength. In her silence, there is strategy. And in her fire, there is purpose. That's the essence of a calm woman with deep fire. She doesn't burn for attention. She burns for impact. True power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it watches. In a world obsessed with noise, display, and dominance, we often confuse volume with value. But real strength doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to be loud to be effective. It knows when to speak and when to stay still. It doesn't chase the spotlight because it carries its own light. And sometimes the most powerful presence in a room is the one that says nothing, the one that simply observes, understands, and waits. There's a distinct difference between force and influence. Force demands to be felt. Influence chooses when to make itself known. The power that watches is the power that understands timing. It understands that not every moment requires a reaction. Not every battle needs a warrior with a sword raised. Sometimes the most strategic move is to pause, to let others reveal themselves, to let the truth unfold without interference. That's wisdom. That's control. That's power in its purest form. True power doesn't come from the need to prove something. It comes from the knowledge that nothing needs to be proven. It comes from internal clarity, from experience, from patience. It watches not because it's afraid, but because it's assessing. It's not still because it lacks direction. It's still because it's secure. There's nothing to prove when you know who you are. There's no need to dominate when you've already mastered yourself. The one who watches often sees more than the one who speaks. Words can fill a space, but observation fills the mind. When you watch, you catch details others miss. You learn the language of body posture, the truth behind the tone, the contradiction between actions and words. The person who watches is building a library of understanding about people, about motives, about timing. And when they choose to act, it's not from emotion, but from insight. That kind of decision-making cannot be faked. It is earned through intentional stillness. Roaring can be powerful, but it can also be impulsive. It can drown out the very lessons that are needed most. Watching, on the other hand, is about absorbing. It's about gaining clarity. And clarity is power. It is what separates movement from noise. The one who watches knows when to act and when to wait. They understand that silence is not the absence of courage, but the presence of control. In nature, the most powerful animals don't constantly roar to remind you who they are. The lion doesn't roar to hunt. It roars to declare. But when it hunts, it's quiet, focused, precise. The eagle doesn't scream before it strikes. It watches from above, steady, calculating, invisible until the exact moment. That is the essence of true power. It is not flamboyant. It is deliberate. It does not waste energy on appearances. It reserves that energy for impact. A powerful person doesn't need to be understood in every room. They don't explain themselves repeatedly. They are okay being misread in the short term because they're focused on long-term purpose. They don't act out of insecurity. They act when it aligns with intention. And when they speak, people listen, not because they're loud, but because they're rare. When something is rare, it holds weight. Their voice carries meaning because it's not thrown around carelessly. That's what watching does. It makes every word, every move count. True power respects timing. It doesn't need to dominate every moment. It knows that sometimes the best move is no move, to watch how things unfold, to let others reveal who they are, to see what stays and what falls apart on its own. There's a discipline in watching that most people overlook. It takes restraint to not jump into every situation, to not correct every wrong, to not engage every critic. But that restraint is exactly what gives that person the advantage. People who watch learn. They learn from others' mistakes. They learn from silence. They learn from patterns. And those lessons become weapons, not of destruction, but of preparation. Because when you're prepared, you don't need to panic. When you've watched enough, you can predict what's coming. You can respond with precision instead of reacting in fear. That's the kind of power that doesn't just survive, it thrives. Watching is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's emotional intelligence. It's patience with purpose. The person who watches is not detached. They are deeply aware. They are studying everything. The energy in the room, the alignment of actions with words, the rhythm of the moment. And when the time comes, they strike, not out of ego, but out of readiness. That move carries weight because it comes from a place of knowing, not guessing. Roaring may get attention, but watching builds understanding. And understanding leads to mastery. You can't master what you haven't studied. You can't lead what you don't understand. Power that watches is never caught off guard. It is prepared. It is rooted. It's not driven by fear of missing out or a need to be seen. It's driven by purpose, by alignment, by vision. There's a calm confidence that radiates from people who don't rush. They trust the process. They trust their intuition. They know that everything doesn't need their immediate response. They have nothing to prove. They've already proven it to themselves. So they watch not as bystanders, but as strategists. They watch so that when they do move, their move is final. Their presence is felt, not just seen. In a noisy world, watching becomes an act of rebellion. It says, I will not be rushed. It says, I don't need your approval to be effective. It says, I'm not moved by noise. I'm moved by purpose. And that kind of posture shifts atmospheres. It commands respect without demanding it. It earns trust without asking for it, because people sense that there is something deeper going on, something that can't be faked, something solid, stable, sure. The roar is temporary. It's heard and then fades. But the presence of someone who watches, who waits, who knows when to step in, that's lasting. It leaves an imprint, not just an impression, because that kind of power is internal. It's not borrowed. It's built quietly, steadily, unshakably. True power doesn't need to be validated through volume. It validates itself through vision, discipline, and presence. It doesn't always roar because it doesn't have to. Sometimes it just watches. And when it moves, everything else does too. She doesn't need to speak loudly to make history. Her voice doesn't echo through the streets, yet her impact is felt in every corner of the world she touches. She doesn't raise her tone to command attention, yet when she enters a room, energy shifts. The kind of woman who makes history does so not because she's the loudest, but because she's consistent, intentional, and unwavering in purpose. She carries herself with quiet authority, not demanding recognition, but drawing it through the strength of her presence and the integrity of her action. History isn't only shaped by those who shout slogans or dominate the headlines. It's shaped by those who dare to walk forward when the world expects them to stand still. It's made by women who understand that impact is not about noise. It's about influence. And influence comes from who you are, not how loudly you speak. The quiet woman who stays rooted in her values, who builds in silence, who creates change without seeking the spotlight, is the woman who leaves a legacy. The power of restraint, the power of focus, the power of staying steady when others sway. The woman who doesn't need to raise her voice is the woman who knows that her life is her message. That every step she takes, every decision she makes, every life she touches speaks volumes. She may not be trending, but she's transforming. She may not be celebrated, but she's changing the game. She makes history in how she endures without bitterness, in how she leads with compassion, not control, in how she chooses character over popularity, purpose over praise. She doesn't follow the noise of the crowd. She listens to the quiet rhythm of her calling. And in doing so, she builds something unshakable, something that can't be measured by applause, but by the lives bettered because she stayed the course. She doesn't need to shout because her presence already speaks. It speaks of battles fought in private, of tears wiped away in solitude, of dreams pursued without applause. Her quietness is not emptiness, it's depth. She speaks in how she carries herself, in how she shows up with dignity, even when she's overlooked, in how she loves deeply without needing to be seen, in how she chooses excellence even when no one is watching. History has always had room for the woman who walks in purpose. She's the one who raises generations, not just voices. She builds legacies in boardrooms and kitchens, on platforms, and in prayer closets. She teaches by example. She creates change through consistency. She's the quiet force behind revolution, the steady hand behind great movements. She may not be in the headlines, but she's in the hearts of those she impacts. She doesn't speak loudly because she doesn't need to compete. Her lane is her own. Her mission is clear. She doesn't waste time proving her worth. She lives it. She doesn't argue with doubt. She answers it with results. And she understands that the most powerful statements are not always spoken. Sometimes they're lived. She builds, she serves, not for credit, but because it's who she is. That kind of power is timeless. When she does speak, it's not to impress, it's to impact. Her words are few, but they are full. She doesn't talk for attention. She talks for transformation. And because she's not always speaking, people listen when she does. Her silence gives her voice weight. It gives her truth power. Her influence doesn't need noise. It's felt in her consistency, her courage, her clarity. She understands that making history is not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the most faithful to the purpose you were born to fulfill. She chooses substance over spectacle. She understands that movements are not always started with megaphones, but often with whispers, with quiet decisions, with faithful daily steps. And she takes those steps even when no one notices, because she's not driven by attention. She's driven by assignment. She makes history in the way she nurtures potential, both in herself and others, in the way she sees possibility in what others call broken, in the way she rises after each fall with grace and grit. She doesn't broadcast her struggles, but her strength is built in them. She doesn't post her victories, but they're real and hard-earned. She's not chasing legacy, she's living it, one courageous act at a time. You can feel her fire not because it burns loudly, but because it never goes out. She may not scream her message, but it's written in the lives she touches, the change she creates, the spaces she heals. She isn't seeking to be remembered, she's seeking to make a difference. And in doing so, she becomes unforgettable. The world tries to tell her that she needs to be louder to be noticed, but she knows better. She knows that stillness speaks, that kindness echoes, that consistency leaves a mark. She doesn't need to be louder, she needs to be true. And that truth carries further than any shout ever could. She doesn't wait for platforms to do what she was born to do. She leads from where she is. She empowers from the inside out. She loves fiercely, fights wisely, and walks humbly. She understands that greatness isn't always seen in crowds. Sometimes it's grown in quiet places, in seasons of waiting, in moments of doubt, in the silence of the in-between. And she honors those seasons because she knows they're shaping her into a woman who doesn't just speak of power, she walks in it. Making history is not about being heard by the masses. It's about being remembered for what mattered. And the calm, quiet, focused woman often leaves the deepest imprint. Not because she demanded space, but because she filled it with purpose. Not because she shouted the loudest, but because she moved with meaning. Not because she chased greatness, but because she carried it in how she lived. She doesn't need to speak loudly to make history. She understands that legacy is not built in noise. It's built in purpose, in passion, in presence. And she brings all three without needing to raise her voice. In the end, the true strength of a woman is not measured by how loudly she speaks, but by how powerfully she moves through the world with purpose, grace, and unwavering intention. Her silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. Her calm is not passivity, it is control. And her presence, though quiet, shifts the atmosphere. She watches, she waits, she builds, and when she moves with impact. She doesn't roar for recognition, she lives for legacy. And that is how she makes history. Not through noise, but through unshakable purpose and undeniable power.